Would you also, and I have to ask you directly about this because it's such a big topic at the moment, would you also want to resist some of the interference, some of the pandering and some of the sort of gerrymandering that's happening in combat units to get women and even transgender people involved in the front lines? What's your broad assessment of the sort of women in combat debate? Because you hear a lot of vets say, look, we tried this, it doesn't work. It destroys morale. Women aren't strong enough. They end up having to be protected. The men stop paying attention to what they're doing. There's so many negative outcomes here, and it's being foisted on us by generals who've never seen combat or haven't done for 30 years. And standards are either being overlooked or lowered to get people in the field to effectively put the whole unit at risk. What's your view on that?
And people will say, if I just give my opinion, they say, well, you're a guy and you're a misogynist or whatever. And then I'd say, okay, look at the science. And the Marine Corps actually did a very thorough job of collecting the science. They put sensors on a whole unit of all females, all males, and a mixed unit. And they put them on a 90-day exercise out in, I think in California, a simulated combat field exercise.
Right. It's a long time. I mean, 90 days is enough to get some data,
sure,
right?
You bet. And so they measured heart rate, movement, how much they carried, an artillery shell, a backpack, climbing up a hill, whatever. And they found significant unit underperformance compared to the all-male unit. If we have a Marine Corps that is there to wage war and win and not worry about everyone feeling good about the outcome because they might have been excluded because they just weren't strong enough, as a society, we have to really debate that. Do we want an effective military or do we want a politically happy, correct one?
From my point of view, there's also a sort of moral and social question here. I mean, it strikes me, you may have a different view on this, but it just strikes me as intrinsically horrifying. What kind of society we have turned ourselves into where we expect our women to, to go on the front lines. We're sending a message that we think that women, that we ought to hold on a pedestal and provide for and protect and worship and love. We're throwing them into combat. I mean,
correct. Is chivalry that dead?
Really? I mean, I don't know whether it's just me. I'm glad you think so too, but so many people say, this in the age of rigidly enforced gender equality, when people get upset about door holding and all sorts of ridiculous things like that, the idea that we would send a message that we're perfectly happy hurling women onto the front line strikes me as slightly appalling.
When you look at the thousands of wounded vets that have come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, the vast majority of those are males. Would American society be ready for half of them to be females? I don't think so.
No, and of course women suffer more.
And this very false idea that wars are sterile, that it's a predator drone watching through a TV screen or watching the video clips on your evening news, it's not like that. Yeah. Okay? And a full-on conventional war is an enormous amount of killing and suffering and danger. And again, the sad thing is, the lame politicians that make those decisions, it's not their daughters that they're sending anyway. And that's the real hypocrisy of it all. And
if you care about women, as anybody with a shred of decency and chivalry and integrity ought to, of course, the data, as you correctly say, look at the data. The data shows that women simply don't cope as well with the aftermath of war. The trauma, the PTSD hits them harder. Is that right?
Sure, but I'm talking about the conduct of war.
Of course.
I mean, as a nation, the most important thing you got to worry about is
how do we
not lose that war? We must win, okay? And making that a secondary consideration to political correctness is societal suicide.